Good morning, dear students. I am Bharti Kathuria Sehgal from the SD Vidya School. We are continuing the chapter Body Fluids and Circulation. Today, we are going to do a very important topic, which is cardiac cycle and ECG. So, let's start. Now, before we start with cardiac cycle, you must understand the cardiac conduction system. Now, the cardiac conduction system includes the different parts of the heart which carry and receive the messages for contraction and relaxation of heart. So here you will find the different kind of structures which are involved in the conduction system. First of all, let's talk about the SA node. The SA node, or what we call as the sinoatrial node, is also called the pacemaker of the heart. Heart is called as myogenic. It is called myogenic because it is auto-excitable. That is, it can generate its own potential, the action potential that normally all organs need either from brain or spinal cord from other sources. Heart can generate its own action potential with the help of this SA node. So it is called as the pacemaker of the heart. Next is the AV node. AV node, or what we call as the atrioventricular node, which is also called as the pace setter, as this carries the signal generated by the SA node to different parts of the heart. Now, this nodal tissue, you must understand, nodal tissue are also muscles, but they are the modified muscles which generate and carry out the potentials. Now, the speed of action potential is highest in the Purkinje fibers. Now here you can see the Purkinje fibers which are present in the heart. You can also find the interatrial septum and the interventricular septum. The interatrial septum is between the right and the left atria. So these are separated with the help of this interatrial septum. Similarly, the two ventricles, the right and the left ventricle, are separated with the help of the interventricular septum. Heart is myogenic, as I told you, because it is auto-excitable and almost 70 to 75 times per minute, which is an average of almost 72 times heart beats in per minute. Now, another very important aspect of the cardiac cycle is systole and diastole. So let's understand what are systole and diastole. Now, for systole and diastole, you know that heart contracts and relaxes. This contraction of heart is what we call as systole, and the relaxation of heart muscles is called as diastole. So it is at the time of diastole that blood enters into the parts of the heart, while it is at the time of the systole that heart pumps the blood out of the heart. So dear students, now you can understand that diastole is the time of filling of blood in the heart, while systole is the time of contraction of heart when blood is pumped out of the heart to either lungs or throughout to all parts of the body. Now let's discuss the most important or the highlight points of the cardiac cycle. Now, each sequential systole and diastole that we just talked about, that is a contraction and relaxation cycle which occurs in the heart, is called as the cardiac cycle. As we just discussed, that heart beats approximately 72 times in a minute. So that is the number of cardiac cycles per minute. One cardiac cycles is approximately of 0.8 seconds. As we can simply calculate by unitary method, that is dividing 60 seconds by 72 times the heart beats, which will be is equal to 0.8 seconds. Now, next important thing is stroke volume. Now, what is the stroke volume? It is the amount of blood pumped by heart in one cardiac cycle. So each time the heart contracts, how much blood is pumped out of the heart is called as the stroke volume. Cardiac output per minute will be calculated by multiplying the stroke volume with the heartbeat rate. So this will be approximately 70, which is the stroke volume, 70 ml, and 72 times the heartbeat rate, which comes to approximately 5 liter of blood. Now, another very important thing about cardiac cycle is the generation of the loved-up sounds. Now, loved-up sounds are created because of the opening and closing of valves. Actually, there is no sound which is created because of the contraction and relaxation of heart. But because of the opening and closing of valves, the sounds are created that are heard as loved-up sounds. They are diagnostic in nature and doctors hear to these sounds for the purpose of diagnosing any kind of disease or any kind of problem in the heart. Now, cardiac cycle timing. As we just discussed that one cardiac cycle lasts approximately for 0.8 seconds. Out of this 0.8 seconds, the time 0.1 second is taken up by the atrial systole. Atrial systole is the time in which atria receive the message from the SA node and start contracting. It increases the flow of blood by approximately 30%. In this time, the AV valves are open, but the semilunar valves are closed. Next, you can see here for 0.3 seconds occurs is the ventricular systole, in which the ventricles contract. It lasts for 0.3 seconds, in which the semilunar valves open and the AV valves are closed. Next, this part of the cardiac cycle, which lasts for about 0.4 seconds, is the joint diastole, in which both the atria and the ventricles relax so that the blood can flow in the heart. So total of 0.1 plus 0.4 plus 0.3 is equal to 0.8. So that's the total timing of the cardiac cycle. During the joint diastole, the valves are open so that the blood can flow between the chambers of the heart and from outside the heart into the heart. Now let's differentiate between the atrial systole, the ventricular systole, and diastole. Now, at the time of atrial systole, the atrium contracts, but the ventricles are relaxed. So, when the right atrium contracts, the blood now will be ready to flow into the right ventricle. Similarly, when the ventricles contract, the atria are relaxed. Blood in the atrial systole flows from atrium to ventricle. The AV valve is open, but the aortic valve is closed during the atrial systole. But during the ventricular systole, the atria are relaxed, ventricles are contracted, the blood flows from ventricle to aorta, the AV valves are closed, and the aortic valve is open. At the time of diastole, the atrium and ventricle both are relaxed. The endoatrium and ventricle, the blood flows from the endoatrium and ventricles into the atrium and ventricle. The AV valves will open so that the blood can flow in, and the aortic valve, so that the blood does not go out of the heart, is closed. Now let's discuss about the phases of the cardiac cycle in association with the ECG that we study. First, as we discussed, is the atrial systole, in which the atria begin to contract and the blood is pushed into the ventricles. This marks the beginning of the depolarization of the atria, known as the P wave. The next is the QRS wave. This QRS wave is marked by the ventricular systole, in which the ventricles contract. So it marks the ventricle depolarization. The next T wave, which is of ventricular repolarization, in which the ventricular systole, the semilunar valves open and the blood is ejected out of the ventricles. And then comes the ventricular diastole, in which you will see a plain line. So here, P wave, as we just discussed, indicates the atrial depolarization, while the QRS complex indicates the ventricular depolarization. The T wave represents the ventricular repolarization, and U wave is the straight that we talk about. So now, it is of very high clinical importance because doctors generally, you must have seen in the serials and other places, that ECG indicates the heartbeat, because ये potential दिखा रहा है आपको, heart का current है एक तरह से, electrocardiogram. The one that you can see here is electrocardiogram, which is electrocardiogram जो है वो आपको heart की functioning के बारे में बताता है. बहुत important है. आपसे पूछा जा सकता है कि ईसीजी क्यों किया जाता है, तो इसका रीजन क्या होता है. ईसीजी से हार्ट अटैक का पता लगाया जा सकता है, कि ईसीजी से हार्ट की ब्लॉकेज का पता लगाया जा सकता है, और पता लगाया जा सकता है कि हार्ट के जो अलग अलग पार्ट्स हैं, एसए नोड है या एवी नोड है, ये फंक्शनिंग प्रॉपर कर रहे हैं या नहीं कर रहे हैं. सो इन पर्पसेस के लिए ईसीजी किया जाता है. सो जनरली आपने देखा होगा कि अगर ये वेव्स नहीं जनरेट हो रही हैं, तो ये एसए नोड के थ्रू जो ये आप हम कह रहे हैं डीपोलराइजेशन से स्टार्ट हो रहा है, फिर वेंट्रिकल्स का डीपोलराइजेशन हो रहा है, और फिर से दोबारा से रीपोलराइजेशन स्टार्ट हो रहा है. तो अगर ये प्रोसेस नहीं चल रही है और एक प्लेन लाइन आपको दिखाई देगी बीप 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 बीप, सो दैट वुड इंडिकेट दैट द हार्ट इज नॉट फंक्शनिंग, और simply we can say the person is dead. That's all for today. Keep sending me your queries and keep revising the chapter again. God bless you all.